O eternal and almighty God, from whom all power and wisdom come, we are assembled here before thee to frame such laws as may tend to the welfare and prosperity of our province. Grant, O merciful God, we pray thee, that we may desire only that which is in accordance with thy will, that we may seek it with wisdom and know it with certainty, and accomplish it perfectly, for the glory and honor of thy name and for the welfare of all our people. Amen. We acknowledge we are gathered on Treaty 1 territory, and that Manitoba is located on the treaty territories and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota Oete, Dene Sulene, Neothok nations. We acknowledge Manitoba is located on the homeland of the Red River Métis. We acknowledge northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. We respect the spirit and intent of treaties and treaty making, and remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. Please be seated. Routine proceedings. Introduction of bills. The Honourable Member for Dawson Trail.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move, seconded by the member for Agassiz, that Bill 217, the Men's Mental Health Awareness Week Act, Commemoration of Days, Weeks, and Months Act, amended, Loi sur la semaine de sensibilisation à la santé mentale des hommes, be read for the first time.
Been moved by the Honourable Member for Dawson Trail, seconded by the Honourable Member for Agassiz, that Bill number 217, the Men's Mental Health Awareness Week Act, Commemoration of Days, Weeks, and Months Act, be now read a first time. The Honourable Member for Dawson Trail.
Tattooed to my daughter's arm in my handwriting, is it okay not to be okay? This statement was originally part of my first speech to this House when I shared my mental health struggles. Since that day, I've had lots of people approach me with their stories. Each of these stories has become a part of why I wanted to bring this bill forward. I look forward to sharing some of those stories I have heard with this House to highlight the importance of this bill. I would like to thank Doug McKee from Manshed for being here and thank him for the work he does for men's mental health. With these brief words, I would end this with the full quote that I put on the record. It's okay not to be okay. What's not okay is to go through it alone. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Yeah, yeah.
Committee reports. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion?
Agreed.
Agreed and so ordered. Committee reports. The Honourable Member for Lagimodiere.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the 6th report of the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development.
Your Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development presents.
The Honourable Member for Lagimodiere.
Honourable Speaker, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Radisson, that the report of the committee be received.
It's been moved by the Honourable Member for Lagimodiere, seconded by the Honourable Member for Radisson, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the will of the House to adopt the report? Agreed and so ordered. The motion is accordingly passed. Tabling of reports. Ministerial statements. Member statements. The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I rise in the House today to honour a Wolseley constituent, Emma Cloney. Emma serves as the Vice President of Lipedema Canada and President of Lipedema Manitoba. Emma is a nurse, a musician, and someone who lives with lipedema. She has been instrumental in bringing together leaders from almost every province and territory to collaborate on resources and advocate to remove barriers to care. Lipedema Canada was incorporated as a nonprofit in January of this year and launched their website in April. Lipedema is a connective tissue disorder characterized by a type of fat tissue that builds up over time. Lipedema causes swelling and easy bruising. Found most often in the arms and legs, the tissue is painful and can feel like hard lumps beneath the skin. It's a progressive disease, and lipedema can lead to mobility challenges, extreme fatigue, and mental distress. It can affect one's ability to work, relationships, and quality of life. Lipedema almost exclusively affects people assigned female at birth and may affect up to 11% of women worldwide. While the cause of lipedema remains unknown, genetics are believed to play a role, and the condition is not affected by dietary intake or activity level. People with this disease frequently experience body shaming and judgment, even from medical professionals who don't understand the condition. June is Lipedema Awareness Month, an excellent time for members of this legislature to learn more about the condition. Please visit the newly launched Lipedema Canada website and join me today in recognizing Emma Cloney for her efforts and all the other members of Lipedema Manitoba who are in the gallery with us today.
The Honourable Member for Morden Winkler. Oh, sorry. The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Honourable Speaker, I ask for leave that the names of my guests be included in Hansard.
Is there leave? Leave has been granted. The Honourable Member for Morden Winkler.
Honourable Speaker, today I would like to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to the heroes of Morden Winkler Fire Departments. They were not able to attend in person but are watching online. Comprised mostly of volunteers, these dedicated individuals put their lives on the line to protect our communities. In moments of crisis and danger, it is the selflessness and bravery of these first responders that truly shine. I had the honor of growing up in a home with my dad, being a volunteer firefighter. My dad, John Schellenberg, was dedicated and committed to serving and keeping others safe. He was my hero. Volunteer firefighters are the unsung heroes of our society. They juggle their responsibilities at work, their commitments and to their families, and still find time to undergo rigorous training and courses to enhance their skills and knowledge. These individuals are driven by a profound sense of duty and a desire to serve their communities, often going above and beyond the call of duty to ensure the safety and well-being of others. The Morden Fire Department, led by Chief Andy Thiessen and supported by 38 volunteers, these men and women have a wealth of experience, with some firefighters serving for over 30 years. Each volunteer has undergone training and have received at least a Level 1 certificate. This dedicated team ensures the safety and protection of the community with their skills and commitment to serve. The Winkler Fire Department, under Chief Pezzold's leadership, operates with 37 volunteers, 3 part-time positions, with an average response time of 4 minutes and 4 seconds within the city of Winkler. The department exhibits efficiency and dedication to its citizens of Winkler. 10 volunteers have dedicated over 30 years of service, showing a commitment to the community and to their safety. I'd like to thank all the firefighters in my constituency. of Morden Winkler, and to all the dedicated firefighters in the province of Manitoba, your commitment and experience are invaluable, and I thank you for your service. Thank you.
The honourable member for Riel. The honourable member for Morden Winkler.
I'd like to ask that the names of the firefighters be entered into Hansard.
Is there leave to enter the names in Hansard? I agreed. The honourable member for Riel.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I rise today in honor of Awasiak-Meskinau Greenway, a phenomenal organization working to maintain and promote the biodiversity and health of the Awasiak-Meskinau Trail. Awasiak-Meskinau Greenway has spent 23 years working to establish a nature corridor rich in plants native to Manitoba along the 4.5-kilometer long trail that runs from the Red to the Seine River. The group has undertaken several projects, including a campaign to plant over 120 trees and the creation of an urban food forest, all while actively working to promote awareness and appreciation of the area's natural and historical legacy. Having served on the board of directors for the organization, I can attest to the community-minded nature of the members involved. Their dedication to both human and wildlife communities is reflected in everything they do. Recently, I was able to attend the Awasiak-Meskinau Greenway annual cleanup. It was wonderful to see so many people from Riel and beyond come together to care for our urban ecosystem. And while the Greenway Trail has always been a testament to environmental action, it now stands as a testament to reconciliation as well. I am proud to say that both the trail and street, formerly known as Bishop Grandin, has been renamed. Now our much beloved nature corridor is known as Awasiak-Meskinau, with the corresponding street being named Abinogi-Mikina. This is an important step in honoring the legacies of Indigenous peoples across Manitoba and in promoting a prosperous future for all community members. I'm honored to be part of a community that cares for one another and for the ecological well-being of our province, a community that brings everyone together as one Manitoba. Honourable Speaker, I'd ask that everyone join me in thanking the team at Awasiak-Meskinau Greenway for their tremendous work.
The honourable member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity to recognize an outstanding La Vérendrye farm family. Marcus and Paige Dewick of Four Oak Farms near Kleefeld are Manitoba's newest outstanding young farmers. The Eastern Manitoba couple was named the 2024 recipients of the award this past March. Manitoba's Outstanding Young Farmers program recognizes excellent operators between the age of 18 and 39. Provincial winners then vie for a chance to be named Canada's Outstanding Young Farmers. Four Oak Farms is an 800-acre dairy, mixed grain, and hay operation. The dairy, which milks 50 cows using the only tie-stall robot in Western Canada. They are also winners of multiple milk quality awards and production farm awards. This operation primarily grows and mills its own feed on the farm. Along with their dairy operation, cash crops include corn and soybeans, as well as forage and grass production for the horse hay market. The couple have been standout farmers for many years and aren't new to the nomination for Outstanding Young Farmer. The nomination process is intense, and the last time they were nominated was in 2016, when very new in running their farming operation. This year, with 8 more seasons under their belts, they entered the competition as seasoned young farmers, which Paige noted allowed them to be much more comfortable. The Dewicks' farming success could not be possible without their team effort approach, each understanding the value of their talents while working together for the common goal. With the national award being presented in November, I would like to wish the Dewicks the best of luck representing Manitoba farmers at the national stage. Please help me congratulate Marcus and Paige, who we have with us in the gallery today, for their well-deserved recognition.
The honourable member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I rise this afternoon to speak to the importance of putting Manitobans first, because sadly, this is something our new government already needs to be reminded of. Bill 209, the Provincial Court Amendment Act, otherwise known as Kira's Law, is being halted in its tracks because of this government's partisan politics. This bill is in tribute to Kira Kagan. Months prior to Kira's tragic murder, her mother, Jennifer, sought an emergency motion to suspend her ex-husband's access to their 4-year-old daughter. There were 53 court orders in 3 years describing Kira's father as abusive, erratic, and having escalating behavior. However, the judge found the evidence compelling but not urgent and adjourned the motion. Bill 209 expands judicial education to include topics of intimate partner violence and coercive control. This bill, while guests were in the gallery, passed second reading unanimously, but this NDP government is now refusing to allow it to go to committee. Honourable Speaker, I would like to remind the government that all political stripes, Liberal, NDP, and PC, have supported this legislation federally and provincially. And it should be noted in Ontario, the PC government supported an NDP opposition bill to declare intimate partner violence an epidemic in the province. Honourable Speaker, this government's behaviour is anti-democratic. We have presenters from all over Manitoba signed up to speak at committee, friends and families of Kira's, healthcare providers, representatives from shelters, resource centres, community groups, and individuals who have experienced firsthand how desperately this legislation is needed, and this government won't even allow for them to come and speak at committee. Honourable Speaker, I am calling upon this provincial government to do the right thing before the House rises for the summer.
The honourable member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'd ask leave to have the Duick's children's names added to Hansard.
Their leave. Leave has been granted. So a couple of things before we get to oral questions. One is just a reminder to all members that just during your member statement, if you just add at the end before your time is up, please add the names of my guests to Hansard. Then you don't have to ask for leave. It makes my life so much easier. At this time, I'd also like to introduce guests in the gallery before we move on, just in case they have to leave. We have with us Taylor Allen, who is the guest of the honourable member for Agassiz. I would also like to draw attention of all honourable members to the public gallery, where we have with us today Satha and Binda Amila, who are guests of the honourable member for Morden Winkler, and Helen Hildebrand, who is the mother of the honourable member for Morden Winkler. On behalf of all honourable members, we welcome you here today. Further, I would like to draw the attention of all honourable members to the public gallery, where we have with us today Gregory Wowchuk of Toronto, Gloria Zabkowski of Midland, Ontario. Gregory is the president of the Professional Engineers Ontario and is in Winnipeg for the annual meeting of Engineers Canada. And they are the guests of the honourable member for Swan River. On behalf of all honourable members, we welcome you here today. And one very important thing to carry out is, as is our tradition, when pages are coming to the end of their term, I'm going to introduce you to Liz DaCosta. Liz had a great year as page, although she wishes her time at the Legislative Assembly was longer. She is grateful for the opportunity. Liz will be attending the University of Manitoba for political science to complete a 4-year bachelor's program with plans of getting into law school. Joining us in the gallery is her mother and father, Liza and Arthur. On behalf of all of us in the Assembly, I want to wish you the very best in the future and thank you for your amazing service to us over the last year. You really are a part of an important team that can allow us to do our work in the chamber. So thank you and the very best to you. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and welcome to all the guests in the gallery, and thanks to Liz and all the best in your summer and everything else that's along your poli-sci and lawyer path. Honourable Speaker, this NDP government is failing at the basics. One of the basic expectations of Manitobans is that their provincial government maintain their roads and highways. And this NDP government, of course, is getting an F on that. 18th Street in Brandon was just named as the worst road for 2024 in CAA's most recent survey. Yet the Premier and the Infrastructure Minister thinks, hey, it's all good. In Budget 2024, the Premier's doubling his taxpayer-funded political subsidy but cutting $164 million from the infrastructure budget. Why is the Premier prioritizing his taxpayer-funded political subsidy over proper maintenance of Manitobans' roads and highways?
The Honourable First Minister.
I want to take this moment to congratulate Liz on your achievements to date and to say to you and your parents, I hope you had an awesome learning experience here. Please take the good things out of the chamber. Leave the heckling behind. Yeah. You won't get away with that anywhere else. All the best and what's next. When it comes to the point raised by the member opposite, 18th Street was at the top of this list in 2022, 2023 under their government. The difference this time, we're going to fix it. We put the money in the budget to do so.
Oh, good idea. How about that?
And I'm glad that the member opposite took the provincial road maps that I tabled to familiarize himself with the location outside of the perimeter. I'll table some further documents, these ones from S&P Global today, which gave Manitoba good reviews on Budget 2024. Hey, specifically, this important credit rating agency said, and I quote, "We believe the new government is committed to fiscal sustainability."
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, regarding 18th Street in Brandon, on April 4th, 2024, the Minister of Infrastructure said, and I quote, "All the potholes have been filled on that stretch of our highway going through Brandon," end quote. But Manitobans surveyed everyone driving on the road and repair shops throughout the province. They know the truth, Honourable Speaker. Not only are Manitoba roads and highways worse than ever, there's less money committed to repairing them. Meanwhile, the Premier is doubling his taxpayer-funded political subsidy. The only question I have to the Premier is, why are you doing that?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, you know, tradespeople, construction workers, so many Manitobans were out of work when the PCs were in power. Because what they like to do was to cut. Yep. What we like to do on this side is to build. All right. And that's why in this year's budget, we've got the funds to fix 18th Street. We're putting people to work right now who are at work in Brandon. We're putting people to work building healthcare facilities. We're putting people to work building schools across the province. That's right. But you know what the most important news of the day is? It's that S&P Global has weighed in on Budget 2024. And of course, they know that what's coming from the member opposite is nothing but noise. And I quote, S&P Global says, "We believe the new government is committed to fiscal sustainability in the long term." End quote. We're getting things done. We're making life more affordable, and the rating agencies agree.
Right on. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, I appreciate the Premier handing out the maps the other day so that he could familiarize himself with anything outside of the city of Winnipeg, Honourable Speaker. So let me refresh his memory. 18th Street in Brandon, Leela Avenue, Winnipeg, Provincial Road 307 in the Whiteshell Provincial Park, Keniston Boulevard, Provincial Highway 26, St. Francis Xavier, Empress Street, Pandora Avenue, Saskatchewan Avenue, Grant Avenue, and Monroe Avenue, Inkster Boulevard in Winnipeg, and Richmond Avenue in Brandon. CAA also found in their survey that 88% of people surveyed just want their roads and highways repaired. But there's less money. We've seen it in the budget. There's less money on infrastructure this year. The Premier is doubling his taxpayer-funded subsidy to his own political party. And again, he's not going to answer this question, Manitobans, but the question is, why is he doing that, sir, when we've got all these roads to repair?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Manitobans know that wait times skyrocketed under the PCs. Wait times in emergency rooms, wait times in healthcare, wait times for health cards kept going up and up and up. But now we see that even the wait times for a comeback has ballooned to 10 days under the member opposite. So nothing new from the PC government. What we do have that's new in the province of Manitoba, in addition to investments in roads and improving services, is from S&P Global, and I quote, "Our expectation in the next 2 years, healthy economic growth and a renewed focus on fiscal sustainability will result in modest operating surpluses and steadily falling after capital deficits," end quote. The question for the member opposite is, if our team has a renewed focus on fiscal discipline, what was happening during their time in office?
Order, please. Stop the clock for a minute, please. I just have to introduce some kids in the gallery that are going to be leaving before we're done with oral questions. So we have seated in the public gallery from Enola School 25 grade 4 and 5 students under the direction of Karen Burr, and they are guests of the Honourable Member for Dawson Trail. The Honourable Member for Roblin.
Agency nurse spending continues to rise under the NDP. Yet, despite campaigning on drawing nurses to the public system, the NDP has provided no incentives to entice nurses to do so. We know mandatory nurse overtime hours are high, a problem pointed out by HSC nurses who declined ratification just this week. Last week, the Premier haphazardly announced his intentions to validate nursing agencies, an announcement that came with no details on what that program would actually look like, and no transparency on how these delays might impact healthcare for Manitobans. Can the Premier please be transparent with Manitobans about how this process may impact their healthcare services?
The Honourable First Minister.
When you ask nurses about what does it take to fix healthcare in Manitoba, they'll tell you that they need better nurse-to-patient ratios so that they can spend more time with each patient. They will ask for an end to mandatory overtime, which skyrocketed under the PCs. And they will tell you that they want work-life balance. They want to be able to spend time with their families while also working in a rewarding setting. All of these issues became crisis points under the PC time in office. With the tentative agreement that we arrived at with the Manitoba Nurses Union, we've put a financial incentive in place to draw nurses back from the agencies, which will give us the health human resource to be able to chart a course toward the end of mandatory overtime, to be able to improve nurse-to-patient ratios. And guess what? I look forward to providing great detail on this all afternoon in the Committee of Supply.
Right on. The Honourable Member for Roblin on a supplementary question.
As we saw this week, MNU nurses were split down the middle on ratification. A WRHA nurse told the media that despite promise of change from the NDP, she, quote, didn't think that's what's going to happen from this contract, end quote. Nurses still cite pay gaps, rotations, violence in the workplace, mandatory overtime, burnout, and forcing full-time hours as key issues.
Sound like they're happy.
Other provinces have put forward real incentives to bring nurses into their public systems. $30K to work in rural BC, $50K for Saskatchewan, up to $15K in Alberta, and some provinces even advertise flexible hours.
Wow.
Why is the NDP doing nothing to incentivize nurses into our public healthcare system in Manitoba?
The Honourable First Minister.
We've got all of those incentives and more in the tentative agreement. That's right. The thing that we don't have is the PC obsession with cutting healthcare. That's right. You see, under healthcare, when it was run by Heather Stephenson, when it was run by the member for Steinbach, we all know what happened. Emergency rooms were closed, and nurses lost their jobs. They were forced to run into the basement of the Health Sciences Center and jostle against one another to sign up for a new position against competition from their former workers. What we have in the tentative agreement today, however, is a $12,000 financial incentive for nurses to take up full-time hours. We've added resources to provincial float pools here in Manitoba so that a nurse could be onboarded after leaving a private agency to join the public system within 48 hours. We have a whole suite of incentives to ensure that the conditions to ending mandatory overtime and improving nurse-to-patient ratios will be added to the system.
Time has expired. The Honourable Member for Roblin on a final supplementary question.
I'm going to table a page from the contract document provided to MNU members that mentions something the Premier neglected to mention in his response. It clearly states that agency nurses are now prohibited from working in their own employment organization. For example, a nurse who works shifts for an agency and also keeps a casual position at St. Boniface to better control her own hours now can't work in the WRHA at all. She'll have the choice of cutting her hours, dropping the flexibility of an agency, or being forced to wait for a full-time position to come up. This, combined with the loose threat of validation without any timelines, sounds more like the NDP are forcing nurses into the public system rather than listening to their concerns and drawing them back in. My question is simple. Why?
Time is expired. The Honourable First Minister.
We've got a compelling incentive for nurses to join the provincial float pool and to leave the private agencies behind. We're not doing this with mandates like the PCs did. Nope. We know that they love mandates, and they love to mandate Manitobans of all walks of life. Instead, what we're focused on is creating an incentive structure that makes the public health care system a better place to work. Yep. The days of emergency room closures are over. Right. We're reopening emergency rooms. The days of attacking physicians and nurses is over. Yep. We're liberating them and encouraging them to speak freely. And the days of mandatory overtime and nurse-to-patient ratios deteriorating are over because you have a health minister that is listening to the front lines and putting together a path to fixing healthcare in Manitoba. Better healthcare is on the way. We look forward to working with nurses to get it done.
That's right. Right
on. The Honourable Member for Fort White.
Yesterday, I asked this Minister of Finance if he could tell Manitobans what the plan is for creating more energy in this province, and his reply is, we're developing a plan. Well, under the previous PC government, there was a plan, and the now current CEO calls that plan the North Star of a guiding document, the first of its kind in Manitoba. At committee, this minister and the current CEO and board chair all committed to getting the House the cost associated with the creation of these strategies, along with the forecast of how much energy Manitobans are going to use in the next 5 years. They committed to getting that within 3 weeks. It's now been 14 weeks and they haven't provided anything. So the question is simple. What is the minister hiding from Manitobans?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Honourable Speaker, we were in government for 2 months, and we brought in $500 million of investment in Manitoba Hydro, partnering with the federal government.
How'd you do it?
That's our record. That's our record. To the member's question, we are developing a plan to ensure that we have the energy we need going forward. We will work to ensure that that energy is reliable and affordable for Manitobans, something that for years Manitobans had to deal with the opposite, a government that was working to make life more expensive. We're going to make life more affordable, we're going to create the energy we need, and we're going to build a better Manitoba.
The honourable member for Fort White on a supplementary question.
For those keeping track at home, that is now question 61 this minister has not answered from me. However, I will answer a question the minister asked me yesterday. The minister asked me, do you know how many megawatts that was developed in the 7.5 years previous? The answer is simple, and I will answer it for him. 695 megawatts of capacity was previously created under the PC government. To put that in perspective, that's enough light, that's enough power to light up Brandon. That is how you answer a question. Maybe the minister can try answering a question for once. The question is simple. Will the minister tell Manitobans what his plan is for creating energy in the province of Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
The plan's forthcoming, Honourable Speaker. We look forward to revealing that to Manitobans in due time. But what I do know is that that plan, what it's not going to contain. It's not going to contain a focus on what the previous government did, which was to find new and creative, novel ways of raising hydro rates on Manitobans. Again, what did they do? They used a BITSA bill to include a 2.9% hydro rate increase on Manitobans in the middle of a pandemic. That was the first time in our province's history that a government had legislated a hydro rate increase. That's their focus. What's our focus? Building more affordable, reliable energy. That's what Manitobans can expect from our government.
The Honourable Member for Fort White on a final supplementary question.
I'm going to try a really simple question for the minister here, and I'm going to use his own quote so it's even simpler for him. We are committed to delivering on a hydro rate freeze, this minister said. I'm also going to table a press release from this premier where he says we are also going to freeze hydro rates. Well, it's been 7 months and there is no hydro rate freeze in the province of Manitoba. Another broken promise by this NDP. Not only did they not freeze it, they are going to increase your hydro by 4%, and they snuck it through in the BITSA bill. Since the minister has a hard time answering questions, this is a real simple one. Will the minister simply admit today to Manitobans that he has broken his promise and he's going to increase hydro rates in the province of Manitoba? Yes or no? It's that simple.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Honourable Speaker, the member opposite wants to talk about what we're doing to improve affordability. Let me enlighten him a little bit. Some of the lowest fuel prices in the country.
Order. Order. The member for Fort White will come to order. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Let's do it again. Lowest fuel prices in the country. Inflation in the country. Food prices in the country. Is doing. We're making life more affordable each and every single day. And that's what Manitobans can expect when it comes to our energy plan. We're going to make sure that we develop more energy because we know we need it, but we're going to do that in a way that ensures it's reliable, it's affordable, and Manitoba Hydro stays public.
The Honourable Member for Morden Winkler.
So angry, Sala.
Honourable Speaker, I have heard from my constituents that this government's actions are directly impacting their businesses. Throughout Manitoba, we have young people training to pursue careers in the trades. We made them a promise. We asked them to consider careers in the trades, and now, without notice, the NDP have cut the ratio and kicked off half the apprentices out of the program. This minister has a chance to do the right thing and keep these young people in the workforce. Will they restore the 2-to-1 ratio as industry is asking for today?
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development, Investment, Trade and Natural Resources.
Honourable Speaker, I appreciate the question from the members opposite. And what we're focused on is ensuring that we have high quality training for apprentices in Manitoba. And what we're doing to make sure that that's a reality is investing in more training seats. An additional $1.5 million is being spent on apprentice training sheets this year, which means more Manitobans have opportunities to get into the skilled trades. We're excited about the future in Manitoba, and we know that those apprentices are going to be part of building that future.
Wow.
The honourable member for Morden Winkler on a supplementary question.
Honorable Speaker, this isn't about safety, it's about control.
right.
These supervisors
All
are
about
professionals. They live a culture of safety on the job site every day, and they pass on to their apprentice. 2-to-1 ratios allow multiple young Manitobans opportunities and help us to offset employee losses to retirement in a safe way. This minister needs to trust the professionals and let them do their job. Will they bring this back, the 2-to-1 ratio today?
Here, here.
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development, Investment, Trade and Natural Resources.
Honourable Speaker, as we know, the NDP build. And we do so in a way that trains Manitobans up to get those jobs. And in that training, we make sure that they have high quality training, that they have safe training and safe places to work. We will stand up for workers each and every day. Our investment of an additional $1.5 million into apprentice training sheets mean that more Manitobans can work in the skilled trades right here in Manitoba to build a better future.
The Honourable Member for Morden Winkler on a final supplementary question.
Honorable Speaker, businesses in my community are worried. They want to work with Manitobans to train them as apprentices, but this government has cut the potential apprentice spaces in half. This is denying young Manitobans the opportunity to pursue meaningful and productive careers. It is denying Manitobans the training they need to provide for themselves and their families. Will this minister reverse this decision today?
Yeah. Good job.
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development, Investment, Trade and Natural Resources.
Honourable Speaker, we know that investing in training and education for young people in Manitoba is how we build a stronger economy, how we build for our future. That's exactly what our government has done. An additional $1.5 million into our apprenticeship programs mean that more Manitobans have high quality training and more safe training. That's how we build a Manitoba that works for all of us, for today and well into the future.
Great answer.
The Honourable Member for Agassiz.
Honourable Speaker, cuts to Green Team funding have had negative impacts across the entire province. In my own constituency, I've had many organizations and nonprofits reach out expressing frustration and disappointment in either the decrease or cut to their funding. These cuts include local municipalities, golf courses, summer day camps and daycares. Honourable Speaker, the Manitoba Agriculture Museum received $0 in Green Team funding this year. Will the minister commit today to restoring funding for the organizations in my constituency today?
The Honourable Minister for Municipal and Northern Relations.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. We are a listening government. We meet, we listen, and we act. So we met with the Camping Association. We met with folks affected by the Green Team. So we're here to announce now a further $300,000 to Green Team program and to support youth employment. Important Green Team initiatives. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Important Green Team initiatives, important programs. We're listening when we're acting on behalf of Manitobans across all this great province.
The Honourable Member for Agassiz on a
Manitoba Ag
supplementary
Museum.
question.
Honourable Speaker, not only did Manitoba Ag Museum receive $0, but many others like Fort Dauphin Museum received $0.
Shameful.
The Manitoba Agriculture Museum is a non-profit charitable organization located in Austin, Manitoba. They offer school programming, popular public events, tours, and preserve many historical artifacts in their collection that honors the rich agriculture history of our province. Can the minister assure that Manitoba Agriculture Museum will receive their Green Team funding this year, and can he announce that today?
The Honourable Minister of Municipal and Northern Relations.
Honourable Speaker, again, meeting, listening, acting. $300,000 more invested in the Green Team program and then youth employment all over. And then specifically to Agassiz, InterVarsity Christian Fellowship of Canada, Austin, Town of Corbury, Municipality of Westlake Gladstone, Heartland Recreation Commission, Valley View Bible Camp, Arts Forward, Beautiful Plains Recreation Commission, Tiger Girls Recreationists, all in the constituency of Agassiz. We're committed to supporting members all over this great province.
The Honourable Member for Agassiz on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, I've highlighted only a couple organizations, but many more were impacted by the cuts made by this NDP government. These cuts have forced community-based nonprofits to scramble and look for volunteers, share resources, and for some perhaps shut down. Can the minister opposite assure me that Manitoba Agriculture Museum will receive their Green Team funding today?
The Honourable Minister, Municipal and Northern Relations.
Honourable Speaker, when they talk about cuts on members' opposite, $800,000 from Manitoba Cabinet Association, cut by that previous government. And then they have the audacity to stand up here and talk about support for Manitobans and Green Team projects. We met with the Capping Association. So again, we meet, we listen, we act. $300,000 more invested in Manitoba Green Teams so that we can have camps open, we can have baseball played, we can have opportunities all over the great province with support from our government. We work in partnership with Manitobans, not divide.
The Honourable Member for Portage-La Prairie.
Honourable Speaker, last year agriculture and the wider Manitoba economy was threatened by work stoppages at BC ports. This strike had an enormous impact on Manitoba agriculture producers. Today, railways are facing the threat of labor action, which will keep grain in silos and cash out of farmers' pockets. Bulk grain handling at ports is currently exempt from labor action under the Canadian Labour Code. Agriculture groups across Manitoba and Canada are calling for similar exemptions for agriculture products at all stages. The Minister of Agriculture must join producers in asking the Federal Minister of Labour for an exemption to Labour Code. Will he do it, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Well, thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, for the member opposite asking a question about agriculture. It's been a few weeks, and it's my great opportunity to get up. And first and foremost, let's show appreciation to the agriculture producers out there today trying to do. There we go. We talk about the importance of what the agriculture producers do and what the industry does for the province of Manitoba. We talk about 9%, 10% of our GDP. I want to personally thank, as we see from our side of the House, nobody clacked from that side of the House, but I want to show appreciation to the agriculture producers of what they provide to our province and what the industry
Member's
also
time
does.
has expired. The Honourable Member for Portage-La Prairie on a supplementary question.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, and I guess that was a no. Agriculture products and crop inputs are transported 12 months a year. There is no slow season. This is why we need a robust and reliable transportation network. The risk to producers, our reputation, and economy is too great to take a hands-off approach. The risk of Manitoba producers is that this government will prioritize organized labor as they have done with bills that they tried to hide and force through. Will the minister take action to ensure the trains keep rolling to to support our agricultural producers? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. And yes, I've had the honour of speaking to the federal government, talking about the importance of the rail and grain movement across Canada and to our province as well. We continue to work on the betterment for the agriculture producers as it's an important time of the year, as always, 365 days a year. As you will remember, it's not part of our responsibility, but we work in partnership with the federal government of the opportunity. But I want to talk about the opportunity. The past 7.5 years, the members opposite choose not to withstand supporting farmers in a lot of respects. And obviously, I think you know one subject that I love to talk about, but the members opposite choose not to have this come forward. But I want to ensure we are here as
Order. 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 The government bench needs to come to order. The Honourable Member for Portage La Prairie on a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I was waiting for it, didn't get it. The fact of the matter is that we as a society consider transport of grains and other ag products as essential services for only a portion of their journey. Manitoba feeds the world, and our agriculture industry feeds our economy. Producers are already hurting with the punitive carbon tax hike that this government is supporting. Will this Minister of Agriculture finally get on side of farmers and commit to supporting any and all action to ensure that our agriculture products make it from farm gate to plate?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And obviously, I'll take no lessons from the critic across the hallway here about how to run agriculture. Let's just talk about conscientiously 15 mask offices were closed under their watch. They want to talk about the opportunity of saving agriculture producers' dollars. We want to talk about the fact of Crown lands. Honourable Speaker, it's so great to hear our support about the choices that that previous government chose to make.
Member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Bill 209, the Provincial Court Amendment Act, or KIRA's law, is an integral bill to combating intimate partner violence. This has been recognized in numerous jurisdictions. This NDP government, however, has halted the bill and has chosen to silence presenters from all over Manitoba by not allowing them to come to committee and share their presentations. Does the government believe that this is democratic?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker, and I want to say miigwech to the member opposite for that important question and raising the issue of expanded training to judges. As the member knows, on this side of the House, we take the expanded training of judges very, very seriously, and we strongly agree that we need to be looking at expanded training for judges and other justice officials like JJPs. That's why as soon as our government came into force, our Justice Minister has been working with folks in his department and other folks consulting on how to strengthen Bill 209, and that's what our government plans to do.
Time has expired. The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, this government has had 9 months to introduce any similar legislation to this, and this Justice Minister has not introduced this legislation. This legislation has been passed at both provincial and federal levels here in Canada. all political stripes, Liberal, NDP, and PC, have supported this legislation. Will this government rise above partisan politics and explain why they will not work across party lines?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker, I want to take a moment just to acknowledge Rona Ambrose, who first introduced an act to amend the Judges Act and the Criminal Code sexual assault back in 2017. In fact, it took 4 years for that act, Bill C-3, to actually receive royal assent back in 2021. And so I want to lift Rona up for the work that she did, but I also want to take this opportunity to lift up all of those Manitobans that are on the front lines of dealing and addressing intimate partner violence, and those that are on the front line wanting to strengthen legislation to ensure that when Manitobans go to court, that they are heard, that they're listened to, and that they're given the best access of justice.
His time has expired. The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, this NDP government supported this legislation at second reading. Numerous individuals, including Kira's family, health providers, survivors, and representatives from shelters, resource centres, and community groups have all signed up to speak at committee. Our province has the second highest rate of intimate partner violence across Canada, yet this NDP government is not prioritising a bill that is taking tangible actions to help survivors now. Does the minister have a message for those who are wishing to speak at committee but are being silenced by this NDP government?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
So I just want to take a quick moment to just say miigwech to our colleague, the Minister of Justice, for undertaking this review and this engagement to strengthen judicial training. But I also want to remind the member for Tyndall Park that both she and I 3 times, and I can't remember, maybe two times, or I don't know how many times she introduced that similar bill. But actually, it was members opposite that blocked that bill. The member for Steinbach, Heather Stephenson, when she was the Justice Minister. I don't know where she is now. But members opposite, while they're clapping for the member for Tyndall Park, stood and didn't give royal assent to our bill. And now all of a sudden, they're the champions of intimate partner violence. They need to stay out of this one.
The member for Assiniboia.
Honourable Speaker, in 2017,
Order.
the former PC government received a credit downgrade after tabling their second budget. During their time in office, they continued to cut, tried to destroy our civil service, and were not transparent with Manitobans. Manitobans rejected their chaos and cuts to services. Can the Minister of Finance please tell the House about our most recent credit rating update from S&P Global and how our government is charting a responsible path for today and the future?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for that excellent question. S&P released their first report card on our government's fiscal management, and we passed with flying colors. That's an A+ stable credit rating. Let me share from the report, I quote, "The new government is focused on fiscal sustainability," end quote. And the report goes on to quote, "The stable outlook reflects our expectations that in the next 2 years, healthy economic growth and a renewed focus on fiscal sustainability will result in modest operating surpluses and steadily falling after capital deficits," end quote. S&P was clear that the PC's budget 2023 resulted in sharp deterioration in the province's finance, but our budget 2024 is getting the province back on track.
Member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Midland.
Honourable Speaker, on this side of the House, we will always stand up for survivors of intimate partner violence. And I thank the member from Tyndall Park for bringing forward this important bill. This this minister responsible for accessibility spoke at length about commitments to increasing disability support worker wages, but in reviewing Budget 2024, this NDP is only doing 20% of what our PCT team did in 2023. When will this minister release the priorities of accessibility and start prioritizing for vulnerable Manitobans?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker. One of the greatest privileges that I've had as the Minister for Accessibility is to meet with so many amazing Manitobans that are involved in advocating in the disabilities community for a wide range of supports. I just want to take this opportunity to say miigwech to each and every one of them for the important work that they do on behalf of all Manitobans. And I would share with the House that Manitoba has taken a lead in respect of accessibility across the country. We're one of the few jurisdictions that actually have an act. And so I think that we are doing good work here in Manitoba.
First time has expired. The Honourable Member for Midland on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, in December, the Accessibility Review and the Act released 27 recommendations to this minister. Can the minister provide an update for the House on whether any of those recommendations have been implemented to date?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker. Our Manitoba Accessibility Office, which is made up of phenomenal staff who are doing just phenomenal work, is actively working on the recommendations and in partnership with those community organizations that are on the front lines of accessibility. So I want to assure the member opposite and Manitobans that are watching today that our team is working very, very hard. We've already passed 4 of the standards for accessibility, including our latest one on transportation.
The time for oral questions has expired. The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Yeah, on point of order.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader on a point of order.
Yeah, you had to call government benches to order numerous times, and I feel there would have been time for one more question. I humbly ask you for that question.
I would indicate that I do not believe the member has a point of order. I will, however, caution the members of the government bench that excessive periods of clapping and carrying on may very well lead to extra questions being allowed. However, today, I didn't believe that it was that excessive, but please keep in mind going forward that you will be watched, and we'll keep that in mind. Order. Petitions. Grievances. Orders. Orders of the day, government business, as agreed to in the leave request yesterday. The House will now dissolve into Committee of Supply. Excuse me, the Speaker's trying to speak and trying to be heard. The House will now resolve into the Committee of Supply to consider estimates from the following departments. In the chamber, it will be Executive Council. In room 255, it'll be Families. In room 254, Health, Seniors, and Long-Term Care. And the Deputy Speaker will now take the chair.
Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now consider the estimates of Executive Council. Does the Honourable First Minister have an opening statement? Honourable First Minister.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chair, and I thank everybody who's here for our government's first Committee of Supply. Estimates process is always an interesting experience. And certainly it's been the great honor of my life to serve as the First Minister and President of the Executive Council. I think everybody in our government feels the same way. And we come to work each and every day to try and make life better for the average Manitoban. Do so with great humility and with a sense of responsibility to do right by people from every corner of this province and every walk of life. When we were first elected, the top priority that we had focused on during the campaign was healthcare. We focused a lot on affordability as well, and we were very happy to cut the provincial gas tax on January 1st of this year. That is a move that statisticians and economists credit with reducing inflation here in Manitoba to the lowest rate across the country. We've also brought in this year's budget a series of investments into healthcare, which are going to help repair the damage that was caused by the previous PC administration, which closed emergency rooms, cut positions in healthcare, and created an adversarial culture within the workplace that focused with an emphasis on bureaucracy at the expense of resources at the front lines. We've clearly articulated a plan to fix healthcare with a focus on just the opposite. Focus on the front lines. Focus on the nurses, physicians, healthcare aides, healthcare practitioners. And of course, to de-emphasize the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy has an important role, but it exists to support the front lines. And that's what we're focused on. So our government has, in their first budget, put forward the money to scope the new emergency room at the Victoria Hospital, new emergency room for Eriksdale, has put in measures to hire 1,000 new healthcare workers. But this afternoon, I wanted to talk in particular about the incentive structure that we're putting in place to draw nurses back into the healthcare system publicly in Manitoba. The use of agency nurses in the province is something that has created greater costs for the healthcare system and a lot of uncertainty for people, particularly in regions like Prairie Mountain, which has seen the use of agency nurses skyrocket. But agency nurse usage has crept across the province and is pretty widespread in areas like Southern Health and Interlake Eastern as well. This occurred under the previous PC government, and when you talk to nurses themselves about why, they say that it is because of the working conditions, the lack of work-life balance, the mandated overtime, the unsafe nurse-to-patient ratios that were created by previous health ministers like Heather Stephenson. In the tentative agreement that we've arrived at with the Manitoba Nurses Union, we've put in a plan to fix the skyrocketing use of agency nurses in the province. The tentative agreement with the Manitoba Nurses Union has an incentive that will draw nurses back from private agencies to working in the bedside within the public system. The tentative agreement we have with the Manitoba Nurses Union has an incentive structure that when we get those nurses back into the public system by way of the provincial float pool, will allow us to chart a path towards ending mandatory overtime within the province, will allow us to chart a course towards safer nurse-to-patient ratios. We know, for instance, in the intensive care units, the nurse-to-patient ratio that is safe is 1-to-1, and that's what we want. There's other nurse-to-patient ratios in the ERs, in the ward beds, in the personal care homes, and other healthcare settings, and we want to work with nurses to be able to get to those safe staffing levels. We also know that when it comes to issues like culture in the workplace, addressing questions around safety and violence that nurses are facing, that these require additional staff. And so what the tentative agreement that we've arrived at with MNU does is it creates an incentive structure to bring those nurses back into the public system. The chief mechanism for us to be able to do so is for us to first have expanded the provincial float pool, which we were happy to do within our first few months of taking government, to include the city of Winnipeg, which includes large hospitals which serve people from across the province, including Health Sciences Centre, St. Boniface, and the Grace. Significant because they're the hospitals with intensive care units. Beyond that, we have also, within this collective agreement, come to an understanding with the MNU so that there would be a full-time incentive paid to nurses who increase the number of hours worked from their baseline position to include the provincial float pool. So previously, the incentives for nurses to go full-time would be if they went from, say, a 0.4 or 0.5 to a 1.0, working within the same setting. For instance, within a personal care home. If they would go from 0.5 to full-time in the personal care home, they might receive a top-up payment. This tentative agreement would allow the nurse to keep the 0.5 within that personal care home, but then pick up the other 0.5 worth of hours within the provincial float pool. They would receive a $12,000 financial incentive, which is pensionable, which would allow them to receive benefits with respect to those hours worked. What this does is it puts work in the public system on a par in terms of the attributes that some nurses are looking for with what the nursing agencies are offering. The reason why nurses left over the past 7.5 years under the previous government for the private agencies was because many felt anyways, that only through the private agencies could they control their own schedule. Could they have work-life balance? Could they be able to work in the settings that they were comfortable with? And what we're doing now within this new tentative agreement is saying that we're going to allow you control over when you work. We're going to guarantee through the provincial float pool that you're going to work in the settings in which you're qualified and comfortable to be able to deliver the best quality of patient care. And when you do so, you will be able to get this $12,000 full-time incentive. So when you look at it from the perspective of the individual nurse, there's an incentive that makes sense for them because working in the public system now offers the same work-life balance, a competitive pay scale, an incentive, financially speaking, which is comparable to what's on offer with the private nursing agencies. But when you look at it from the perspective of the public system, once we've incentivized nurses to join the provincial float pool, we are also ensuring that the public healthcare system in our province, when they need to staff up a rural emergency department, when they need to staff up a personal care home, the first call that they make won't be to a private agency at great cost to the provincial taxpayer. The first call that they'll make is to the provincial float pool. And they'll now be able to draw on this ready-made pool of talented nurses with a ton of qualifications who are being well compensated to be able to come in and address the staffing issues. So I'm really grateful for the Manitoba Nurses Union for proposing this innovative solution to help create an incentive to draw nurses back into the public system. This is one important step towards the broader goal of fixing healthcare in our province. I recognize that due to the frustration of working under the previous government, nurses are dealing with a lot right now. They've had to deal with closures, with layoffs, they've had to deal with a pandemic and an adversarial relationship with their employers under the previous government. But we've sent a clear message. We're serious about fixing the culture within the workplace. We're serious about ensuring that pay and benefits are competitive. But perhaps most importantly of all, we are committed to the broader system reform so that a nurse is safe in the workplace, so that a nurse can deliver the kind of patient care that they signed up to be able to deliver, so that a nurse is going to be able to see their family and be at the T-ball games, hockey games, extracurricular activities, birthday parties, while still working full-time hours through flexible scheduling arrangements that work for them. So I'm very excited about the prospect of us being able to move forward with nurses. I thank those who've engaged in the information sessions and who've been engaging in conversations with their representatives. I look forward to the day when we'll be able to move this forward. I also want to point out that on the side of flexibility, that though the incentive that I'm describing is $12,000 for a year, it will actually be attainable for a nurse for every 6-month period. That way there's even more flexibility. If, let's say, you turn 40 or your spouse turns 40 and you take the trip of a lifetime, well, you'd still be able to qualify for the full-time incentive for the other 6 months of the year, even if you took additional time off. So again, flexibility, responsiveness to the needs and the work-life balance concerns, a path towards ending mandatory overtime, a path to improving nurse-to-patient ratios, and a balance between both the needs of the individual nurse with the needs of the provincial healthcare system. This tentative agreement is something positive for the people of Manitoba, and I'm very happy to share information about it this afternoon. Thank you.
We thank the Premier for those comments. Does the Leader of the Official Opposition have any opening remarks? Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. So before we begin, I just want to touch on what an honour it is to be sitting in this seat as interim leader of the Progressive Conservative Party and of the official opposition. That's what the decision was of Manitobans back almost 8 months ago. And so I'm going to take this position very seriously, and I look forward to the next few days. I'm glad that we finally got started on the estimates process, and here to be able to ask questions to the Premier since the election, and some very serious questions. And of course, with, as I said, the provincial election being just about 8 months ago, it's time, and I'm glad that you know, like I said, we're finally getting into the estimates process. The budget was brought forward quite a few months ago, and so it'll give us an opportunity to ask questions to the Premier about his government, about his budget, and the direction that this government is taking our provinces, the province so far, the decisions that have been made. I'm hopeful that over the next quite a few hours, considering I guess we had a total of all 3 rooms 100 hours to ask questions, and again with a short amount of time leading into June 3rd when the rise of session happens. We do have just a few hours before us, but I'm hoping that we'll have a bit of a different tone than in question period, where we'll be able to get some answers from the Premier about some of his decisions that he's made over the last almost 8 months. The budget has been and was fairly disappointing. I think the NDP is going in the wrong direction. Some of the questions I'm going to be asking on is the fact that in budget 2024, they're raising taxes, they're driving up debt. Doesn't seem to be, doesn't matter which department we ask questions on, there seems to be a lack of plans. I know that in the opening statements, the Premier mentioned specifically healthcare. And it's interesting to hear some of his plans, but we haven't seen any actions yet. We haven't seen any plans on growing the economy to help staff the healthcare system. We know that there's been some words put on the record in regards to amount of healthcare providers. I've had the privilege and the honor of representing the Lac Du Bonte constituency now into my 14th year, and I've seen many decisions back when we were in opposition in the first place under the NDP, under Greg Selinger, who heavily endorsed today's Premier, the MLA for Fort Rouge. The lack of action on various different things in regards to healthcare, infrastructure, education, various other topics, and of course family services as well. So I look forward to being able to ask some of those questions. We saw that budget 2024 again panders to some of the union bosses. We've seen cuts to roads and infrastructure, clean water, seems to be defunding some of the justice system. We've seen the cuts to education, the rise of taxes to your own personal homes. We've also seen this Premier and his government try to take some credit for the increase in training seats, some of the good work that our government had done over the last 7.5 years previously to this NDP government, which never was done under the Selinger government. And I guess part of it, and I've mentioned this before, that the Premier, the MLA for Fort Rouge, is going to be able to reap some of those rewards of the good work that we did in the 7.5 years of planting those trees that should have been planted in regards to professional occupations quite a few years ago, but we took it upon ourselves to do that. So part of his healthcare staffing so-called plan is basically to stand there and take the credit for the work that we've done. We know that in budget 2024, Manitobans are going to be paying more. I know that the Premier pats himself on the back for the temporary gas tax holiday, and we will get into some questions, and I'm sure he'll bring that up multiple times as he has in question period. I don't know how many questions I've asked him on the taxpayer-paid political subsidy to his own party, but I think we're at about 5 sets, so we must have hit close to 15, 18, 21 questions on that without getting an answer as far as why they would try to hide that from Manitobans and not take it into committee and allow Manitobans to chime in on that. So we're quickly seeing that over 6 months, we're starting to see some of the truths, I guess, in regards to the fact that the NDP government really doesn't have any plans. And so over the next few days, the next few hours, we're going to, as the official opposition, continue to hold the Premier to account for his words during the election, his words when he was in opposition, and his words now that he's in government. So on crime and public safety, with less funding, we know that not only in the Premier's constituency, but in others all across Manitoba, crime is increasing, and again, no real plan for solving that or even coming close to it. On healthcare, where they've had targets, they've got no plans, and on families, we know that they're cutting CFS funding. So I do have questions about the way that this Premier is choosing to govern Manitoba. But additionally, of any of equal importance, I'll be asking some questions today about how the NDP are governing themselves. I want to get into those questions and hope the Premier is eager to get to some of those answers. They will have a bit of a different tone from question period, and so I guess all I can do is ask those questions and hope that those answers will be forthcoming. And so with that, Honourable Chair, I conclude my opening comments.
We thank the Leader of the Official Opposition for those remarks. In accordance with Sub-Rule 78(16), during the consideration of departmental estimates, questioning for each department shall proceed in a global manner, with questions put on the resolution once the official opposition critic indicates the questioning has concluded. At this time, we invite ministerial and opposition staff to enter the chamber, and we ask that members please introduce their staff in attendance. Honourable Premier.
I'm joined by two remarkable individuals with a ton of horsepower and a deep understanding of how government in Manitoba can serve the people in a good way that advances the public good and advances the public interest. To my right is Sarah Thiele, who is the clerk of the Executive Council. She is a career civil servant who's come up through many important posts within the public service, and I'm very honored to be able to work closely with to help advance the projects that our government's focused on, making life more affordable, fixing healthcare. And then to my left is the senior political staffer, the Chief of Staff to Government, Mark Rosner. But longtime viewers of the estimates will know him as the Tories' worst nightmare. That's how I've introduced him every single year that we've sat in estimates. When I introduced him that way in the last estimates committee, Heather Stephenson scoffed and said, "No, I don't think so." But now she's, obviously pursuing other career opportunities today. So really appreciate the high level of insight and capacity that Mr. Rosner brings to the table. And with that, I'll indicate that we're supported by a ton of other great political staffers, and we work closely with civil servants across all departments with respect to their expertise and in a shared goal of doing right by the people of Manitoba.
Thank you, Premier. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. So introducing to my left is Braden Jones. He is our Chief of Staff, and I'd say one of the secret weapons that we have on our side, and I don't believe necessarily the worst nightmare to the NDP, because I think some of those nightmares are embedded within their own party, Honourable Chair. So I wouldn't give Braden necessarily that title. I know, but I would like to welcome both staff, Sarah and Mark, also to the chamber. And I've had the pleasure over the last almost 14 years, maybe not quite that long, but getting to know both of them as well. So Honourable Chair, I look forward to some of the back and forth, the questions, and hopefully some answers from the Premier's side over the next many hours that we're going to spend together in the chamber. Thanks, Honourable Chairperson.
Thank you for that. And with that, the floor is now open for questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
So, so right away, I mean, whether it was the Premier's opening statement or his introductory of the staff, I mean, he mentioned, he put it on the record, the ton of staff that he has. So just how many staff is that?
The Honourable Premier.
The question is worded in a very vague fashion, and so I'd ask for the member opposite to clarify what kind of staff. Are we talking about the thousands of civil servants who work in the public service here in Manitoba? Are we talking about some other form of staff? I'll tell you, the one thing that we have been working quite a bit on lately is nurses. These are a significant staffing component of our public health care system. And in the opening statement, I wanted to walk the people of Manitoba through some of the high-level components within our tentative agreement with the MNU, but I wanted to dive into a bit greater detail. So the tentative agreement that we have includes a few components. The tentative agreement, if we want to talk about the main agreement per se, includes a lot of the provisions that have been reported in the media to date. We're talking about general wage increases, which are comparable to other collective agreements that we settled. We had a lot of work to do on that front coming into office after the former PC government, who's very adversarial to the average working person. We got the special adjustments, salary steps, salary scales, premiums for working evenings and weekends, things like that, premiums to work in certain settings. Health spending accounts, income protection, personal wellness days, all those things I believe have been described, at least at a high level, publicly in the media. But the tentative agreement also includes a memorandum of understanding between the provincial service delivery organizations in healthcare and the Manitoba Nurses Union. And then it includes a further letter of agreement between the government of Manitoba and these provincial SDOs. The MOU is a document that spells out the full-time incentives I was talking about that are going to act as a bright beacon to draw nurses back from the private agencies and into the public system via the provincial float pool. The letter of agreement is an understanding that charts the path towards safer nurse-to-patient ratios and a path towards the end of mandatory overtime in the province of Manitoba. So you've got these sort of three components. You got the core agreement itself, then you've got the MOU, and then you've got this LOA. When we dive into the details of the MOU, it begins with a preamble, which acknowledges a severe nursing shortage, and that it says that this is creating a hardship to the healthcare system because of all the overtime that's being mandated and agency use, but also that there's a critical role for nurses and they need to be looked after. So beginning in April 1, 2025, the interim period being used to set up a new scheduling system to be able to accommodate all of this new float pool human resources and of course all of the additional scheduling requirements to give nurses that sort of work-life balance and flexibility that I was talking about. Then this incentive structure will kick in. So April 1 next year, nurses will be able to join the float pool and get a full-time incentive. Again, this is a pensionable incentive that goes towards nurses who work 2,015 annual hours. And as I said, that will be calculated within two separate 6-month periods. And so each 6-month period, if a nurse works 1,007.5 paid hours, they qualify for the full-time incentive. But crucially, they don't have to work within the same setting within the healthcare system. They can join the float pool. So you can work the 0.4 within the existing hospital where you have a full-time or a part-time employment arrangement right now, and then you can add the 0.6 in different settings where you're comfortable working through the provincial float pool. What this also does, though, is it throws the doors open for young nurses, people who've just graduated nursing school who don't have a full-time gig yet. And perhaps they've picked up, let's say, a 0.8 within one setting or even a 0.2 within setting just to get their foot in the door. Up to now, they haven't been able to qualify for a full-time incentive. Under this MOU within the tentative agreement, they will. That new nurse will be able to just grab the part-time position to get their foot in the door and then join the provincial float pool and pick up the rest of the hours to not only get full-time pay, the job satisfaction that comes along with that, but also that incentive payment, $12,000 annually. So this is significant, and it will help to address agency nurse use in Manitoba.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. That was a long diatribe over just to ask the clarifying question, which is actually the quote that I mentioned is exactly how he put it. So I basically was asking the Premier to clarify. But he said, when he was introducing his staff, Sarah Thiele and Mark Rosner, that he said, I quote, a ton of staffers. And so I guess I will be a little more clear to when I asked him what did he mean by that, is that how many staff does he have? Technical officers in the OICs. It's interesting that the Premier carried on talking in regards to healthcare, but he knows, and this is how I'm hoping that this isn't going to go. I'm going to try to keep the Premier on topic. And when he mentioned a ton, I know that he probably was not being literal and talking about a classification of weight. We're talking about a number. So a number of staff, how many staff does he have? Technical officers, order and councils, whether that's directly in his office, in the Premier's office.
The Honourable Premier.
I thank the member for clarifying his question. Again, we know the technical officer has a broad definition that also includes deputy ministers. And so when we talk about the Executive Council, there's the clerk of the Executive Council, there's the Chief of Staff, there's the Principal Secretary, there's the Deputy Chief of Staff, and others who work with us. And they're doing great work. Fixing healthcare after years of not just PC mismanagement. Dr. Peachy was very clear that the PCs were mismanaging what they called consolidation, and the normal people of the province called the closure of emergency rooms. But also just like an acrimonious and aggressive posture towards the health workforce in the province that led to many leaving for private nursing agencies rather. And so the LOA, which is the third component of the agreement with the Manitoba Nurses Union, is another important piece of trying to rectify this situation. We'll be able to certainly answer the member's question in due course, but I do think it's important that the people of Manitoba who take the time to watch this committee have an understanding of what's part of the tentative agreement here. This tentative agreement is a pathway towards fixing the problems that nurses themselves have been identifying in the healthcare working environment. So the first piece that I was talking about the incentive built within the MOU to allow folks to get full-time incentives to rejoin the public system. That combined with an expedited process for people leaving nursing agencies or adding time within the provincial float pool to their employment schedule. We've accelerated that timeline from, which was quite lengthy under the previous government, to 48 hours. So if you hear about this tentative agreement being a good move for you, once it gets approved, then on April 1 of next year, and you wanted to step out of a nursing agency within 48 hours, you'd be able to join the provincial float pool in the public system. But the other important issue is the unsafe nurse-to-patient ratios. We know that nurses who left the system quite often brought expertise with them when they left, which means that we lacked the ability to staff up every aspect of the healthcare system under the previous government in an adequate fashion. And it's the patient who always ends up suffering in that situation. So the letter of agreement that we included in this tentative agreement sets out a path towards minimum nurse-to-patient ratios. This would apply in team-based care settings, primary care, hospital-based care, long-term and residential care, personal care homes is what they're commonly referred to in Manitoba, as well as in community and non-hospital care settings. We know that there's excellent nurses who work in home visits, as one example. And so what we're going to do under this LOA is to establish a joint nursing council with representatives from government, from the Manitoba Nurses Union, and from the employers, which is the healthcare service delivery organizations. And they're going to develop the pathway in great detail towards improving nurse-to-patient ratios. What this means is more time at the bedside for each patient. And it's going to be accomplished by taking a look at the overall needs and skills required to provide that care to patients, the complexity of said care, the acuity, the multidisciplinary approach that could be marshaled across such a team. And we'll also set about the way that these plans get evaluated and the way that they get monitored so that we can guarantee that not only do we work towards these nurse-to-patient ratios, but also that we can maintain them over the long run. Maintaining improvements to the healthcare system is going to take continued dedication. We have an excellent health minister who comes from the front lines themselves. We have a team who is committed to a health and all policies approach to government. And starting to fix the nurse-to-patient ratios is an important path towards that. This is also the pathway towards ending mandatory overtime when you take the LOA and the MOU together. Because if you have a greater human resource and stronger nurse-to-patient ratios, those settings will be adequately staffed and therefore not forced to rely on mandating nurses to work overtime to meet their basic staffing needs. There's a comprehensive suite of measures here that are going to lead to real improvements for patient care in Manitoba.
The Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and it looks like the Premier has set the tone for how estimates are going to go, and that's with, again, avoiding and dodging the questions. This is nothing new, but I was hoping that we'd be able to get him back on track, to stay focused. I know it's difficult for him. I've got a chance to know him a little bit over the last 8 years, a little bit longer than he was elected before he was the star candidate under the Zellinger government. I guess I'll be a little more clear in my question. So the question that I have is the number of OICs, orders in council, that have been appointed for executive council in the Premier's office and the executive council. If I can also get a copy of the organizational chart that I know that the Premier has in his hands at this moment.
The Honourable Premier.
Yeah, I think we'll be providing a ton of answers in due course to the member opposite. But it's always good to take a trip down memory lane first. Time was, spent many hours in this committee with Brian Pallister, a few hours with Heather Stephenson as well. We had some memorable moments, some unparliamentary words that were shouted by Mr. Pallister in my direction. Some good reading in the CBC archives for people who want to brush up on recent political history. And I would say that we often ask these same sorts of questions. And typically each year they'd be taken under advisement. And, there wasn't a ton of follow-through under Mr. Pallister or Heather Stephenson when it came to matters taken under advisement and the Executive Council Committee of Supply. So I think we definitely want to hold ourselves to a higher standard than them. And we have. And that's why the election outcome, I think, was the way it was last year. But again, that takes an ongoing commitment, and so we'll certainly not only meet but exceed the precedent set by Mr. Pallister and former Premier Stephenson. But I do just want to say that having the opportunity to speak about the tentative agreement with MNU is important. Because of the nature of the bargaining process and the ratification process, we haven't been able to really speak about it. And I just think it's really important for nurses and for the general public to understand what's being brought forward here. And so that's why I do want to take some of the time sincerely at this committee to be able to put words on the record and to explain it in great detail. At the end of the day, anything we want to do in healthcare starts with staffing, and it starts with the human resources. And so over the past many years, we've been listening to those on the front lines of the provincial healthcare system. And we've been putting together a plan. And early on in that plan was the need to address mandatory overtime, was the need to improve nurse-to-patient ratios, was the question of how are we going to draw staff back from the nursing agencies. And so thanks to the hard work of our health minister and the rest of the team who's worked on some of the policy questions here, and thanks also to the folks who've been directly at the table from the service delivery organizations and from the nurses union themselves, we have a comprehensive plan here. And specifically, this is a plan that came from the front lines. This is a plan from the front lines that will allow us to fix healthcare by drawing nurses back into the public system from the agencies. This is a plan from the front lines that will chart a course towards improving nurse-to-patient ratios and ending mandatory overtime. The change that we seek within the provincial healthcare system is not going to be accomplished overnight. It is going to take years to fix the damage that we've seen. However, this tentative agreement is an important tool that will allow us to make up a lot of that ground. This collective agreement, this tentative agreement, is an important tool that will allow the nurse to have greater control over their own lives when it comes to work-life balance, greater control over their careers, but it is also going to allow us to have the financial flexibility and the scheduling flexibility to be able to surround them with more colleagues, to be able to make them safer when they're working, because they'll no longer be working alone in many settings. You combine that with the moves that we're taking in other areas to put out an RFP, to put in some health and safety requirements around the use of agency nursing in Manitoba, and you have a comprehensive plan towards bringing nurses back from the agencies and into the public system. That's an important step, and it's one that anyone who's invested in healthcare improvement should pay attention to. Certainly, this is a top priority for our government, and we know it's a top priority for the people of Manitoba. But at the end of the day, this is about the patient. This is about the nurse, and this is about listening to the front lines. And so we're going to be able to work with the folks on the front lines to do what we share in common, which is to focus on you, the patient. And I'm very happy to bring this forward.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Honourable Chairperson, thank you for that. So there goes the Premier again. He's going and using language that he doesn't necessarily mean, putting some misinformation on the record, misusing the terminology of tons again. I tried to correct him a little bit just to guide him, but he wants to stay focused on the word tonnage. It's interesting because I sort of knew where the Premier was going to go on the start to the potential question that I had, not the potential question, to the question that I had a few minutes ago, and then of course he went off topic again because that's just what we're going to be doing, I guess, for the next few days. But again, he's starting to show. He has started to show, but more and more Manitobans will see how he deflects and dodges and puts misinformation on the record. So I knew the way he was going to start his answer to that last question I had. And so I went back and took a look at the various estimates process of when he was in opposition, asking questions. And I did check to see if the information that he had requested when he was the leader of the opposition, still the NDP the NDP MLA for Fort Rouge at the time, but I did read and take a look the fact that all of his requests during those estimates were actually satisfied and had been sent forward to him. I know that he was sitting here in the chamber with the organization chart in his hands, and then he put on the record that he was not going to fulfill any questions or requests that I had. And it's unfortunate because I thought maybe the Premier was going to put forward a bit of a turn the leaf type of thing from his predecessor, the Premier Selinger and the Selinger government, but it's looking like once again the MLA for Fort Rouge, the Premier, is again dodging and just avoiding some of the questions. So since he wants to talk about nursing, and he's going to be thrilled because he set the hook, and I'm gonna go there for a little bit to take a fishing terminology. I don't know if the Premier enjoys fishing, but I know he enjoys wrestling. But we'll talk about nurses for a little bit. So he wants to talk about nursing. So far, Darlene Jackson with the from the MNU, 78,000 total hours of overtime under the NDP watch so far. So I'll repeat that, 78,000 hours. No, the Premier's writing it down. Not tons, hours. And Darlene said, Ms. Jackson said, and I quote, "We are still seeing lots and lots of overtime, both mandated and voluntary," end quote. And more, end quote, more agency nurse usage than ever before, end quote. Again, the Premier's taking his amount of time, allotted time for estimates, and putting misinformation on the record. He's not answering the questions already, and I think we're almost 50 minutes into estimates. So I'm asking again, will I get a chance to see the organizational chart before the beginning of next week, so that we can carry on with estimates, and just ask also the OIC, the Orders in Council, the number of staff that the Premier has on Executive Council, and if I can get a copy of the organizational chart, which he had in his hands today.
Before the Premier has a chance to answer the question, I'll just introduce in the public gallery students from Melita School, 24 grade 8 students under the direction of Leanne Bugg, guests of the Honourable Member for Turtle Mountain. The Honourable Premier.
I love the banana belt, so I think it's great that you're able to come and visit your building, the People's Building, the Manitoba Legislature. We're temporary residents here, but this building will always belong to you. And so when you're old enough to vote, I hope that you practice the democratic right that previous generations fought for, that the veterans served overseas to protect, and that is your birthright. And serving here is a great honor of my life, and I hope that you have the opportunity to put your name on a ballot and come here in the future as an MLA, if that is your wish, or that you simply cast a vote and participate in our democracy and pursue your education and career goals as you see fit. So sincerely, I would like to welcome you to Legislative Building, and on behalf of all of my colleagues, I hope you have a great time here.
When we get to the questions of staffing, as I said, it's always good to go down memory lane. So I'll go down the memory lane of the previous answer, which is when I said I would give the answers in due time. And so, of course, you know, the member opposite will have the opportunity to peruse an organizational chart and compare orders in council, which are posted publicly, of course. We can help folks on his side of the aisle access public records if they like. You know, something we're always happy to do in opposition. I would say, though, one of the first decisions that I took as Premier was to shrink the size of cabinet. I thought it was important for Manitobans to have a focused government in the early days of a new administration, a government that was focused on meeting the needs of the people rather than other political considerations that may have led other government decision-making prior to my time being elected as First Minister. Not familiar what those were. So just as a basis of comparison, the former government had 19 ministers in cabinet. And our current team, since Election Day, if you include myself, has 15 ministers. There's 14 members of cabinet, not counting the president of the Executive Council, which is another title that I have the opportunity to serve under. And one of the things that was really important, I think, was to focus on gender balance within those appointments. So we're very happy that half of the folks at the table are women and non-binary people, and that we also have a representation of a broad cross-section of Manitobans around the table, including people from different regions, different walks of life, different sorts of work experience, and people who come from different sectors, folks who come from the finance industry, people who come from the educational sector, folks who come from community voices and other important work that's been done out there in the community. At the same time, we know that staffing up a political organization after an election is an important undertaking. It requires balancing a skill set, implementing a mandate, having the horsepower to respond to unforeseen situations as they arise. And so these are the sorts of appointments that we've been making. I believe that in the first few months of the PC administration, there were about 86 order and council appointments. So we have fewer political staff than that. We know that there is an org chart here. Typically, when we would ask for something and have it taken under advisement, we'd plant the grass seed on our front lawns. We'd water it again, wait for the rains to come. We'd launch numerous freedom of information requests. We'd go out and check the grass, maybe adjust the aeration, soil composition, maybe lay down another layer of grass seed. And then several months after that, we would get a response. So I'm proud to say that we'll expedite the PC wait times in this respect as well too.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
It's nice to, thank you, Honourable Chair, and it's nice to hear a little bit of a lesson on what the Premier does and how he deals with his lawn care. I'm assuming the member doesn't take care of his own grass. I'm sure he's pays for that service. Getting to know the Premier over the last 8 years, it might be a little beneath him. So it's interesting that he was able to shout out a few of the steps to growing some grass. But we look forward to seeing the org chart and some of the orders in council. It's interesting to see if he would put some of those words on the record, but he won't. Instead he pats himself on the back for a shrinking cabinet, dropping a whole department dedicated to seniors, and when you have departments, and especially if you've got one specifically dedicated to seniors, when you drop that, you also drop a deputy, which then focuses on the topic. There's other departments that he decided to drop. What did he say earlier? He said something about de-emphasizing bureaucracy. Well, that's interesting, and I know that we're going to have quite a few hours together in the estimates and in the chamber here, and I think we will get to the fact on that even though
He dropped the Department of Seniors, canceled it, dropped the deputy, dropped some other very important whole departments, addictions. So cabinet's smaller, but how about political staff? How many political staff does the Premier have in the NDP government currently?
The Honourable Premier.
One of the things that I've noticed about the members opposite and the PCs is that they can't say the name of Brian Pallister, even though he's the reason that most of the members opposite were elected into government. The reason why I bring him up at this juncture is, you know, there's a sort of a soft attempt at a hit there about shrinking the size of cabinet, but any sort of criticism in that respect would apply equally to Brian Pallister. So I'll leave it to the members opposite to explain away whatever contortions they want to tie themselves into. But I will say that our team is very strong. We have a lot of bench strength on our team as well too. And there's a lot of important considerations that go into building a strong team. And I'm very proud of our health minister. Health minister is somebody with a ton of horsepower, who, again, I've said time and time again, if I have even some small measure of their capacity, I feel very honored at hearing that said about me. So we have the ability to deliver, and part of the reorganization of government was carried out with two twin considerations. One is continuity within the civil service, so that people who are carrying out important functions such as road clearing or doing works within our parks or, you know, approving mineral development, that they be allowed to continue on with their important work and not spend a lot of their time printing new business cards, which is what happened in 2016. But at the same time, we recognize that the previous government's approach was not working, particularly in healthcare. And so we took a strategic approach to reconstituting government within a few targeted areas. It's a fundamental belief of mine that if you focus on too many things at once, you will do nothing at a high level. And so as a result, when it came to housing addictions and homelessness, we looked at what is happening in the streets of Winnipeg, of Brandon, Thompson, many communities across the province, and we said the current approach is not working when it comes to homelessness. So we talked to the experts and we said, how are we going to be able to improve this situation? And they said, well, one, we need to get people off the street and into housing, but at the exact same time, we also need to wrap them around with the supports necessary to be successful within that housing. Housing first programs, which focus only on the housing, typically haven't been as successful as we would like them to be. People with addictions issues or other mental health issues end up leaving those housing environments and then seeing similar challenges. And so what we decided to do is, well, why don't we just model within our government the approach that we want to see within the not-for-profits, the private sector actors, the other levels of government who are active in this space? Why don't we just have a no barriers approach to marshaling one common response? And so under one government department, housing, addictions, and homelessness, we brought the resources and capacity to stand up new social housing and incentivize the first few steps of the housing spectrum above social housing, and then all the wraparound supports for mental health and addiction services so that somebody could be successful within an environment like that. So our Minister Smith, is doing an excellent job. And in addition to having a lot of capacity and smarts, she also has a lived experience that people within the sector respect, and that she brings a credibility to those conversations, which is really, really important. Similarly, in the Department of Health, it was important after years of cuts and chaos in the healthcare system to bring clarity and to bring to bear a single vision across the service delivery organizations. This is a monumental task that we've asked our health minister to do, but they're doing an excellent job. We are seeing the early stages of reforms to healthcare and improvements to outcomes for patients, and there are many early stage ideas which are being actioned today and have already been implemented in areas like HIV care and seniors care, which are very, very positive moves. And they're made possible by the strategic reorganization that we've brought forward to government. Of course, we also brought gender balance to the deputy minister's table as well, which is important in and of itself.
I'll just remind all members that in the Committee of Supply, we still refer to other members by their constituency or their portfolio. The Honourable Member of the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. So obviously my question was too difficult of a question, but I'm going to assume that the amount of political staff that the Premier has in the NDP government is too many to count. I know that when we look back at the NDP's record on education, it's not a good one. It's not a good one. And when we look back to, as the Premier mentioned, being able to say certain names, it's funny how those that live in glass houses, such as the Premier, throws stones, and he shouldn't, because we know that there was many a time that Premier Selinger, and then shortly after, when he was running in the 2016 election, had to guide his young star candidate, the now MLA for Fort Rouge. And it was interesting that it wasn't long after we saw again some true actions by this Premier, the MLA for Fort Rouge, and how the proverbial knife in the back of the one who put his hand on the Premier's shoulder back in 2016, and Manitobans will see as time rolls along, and we're seeing it already coming up to the 8th month of this Premier, the MLA for Fort Rouge's reign here in the province. So when we think back onto memory lane, we have Brian Pallister had one assistant, one principal secretary. Now we checked the OICs like the Premier suggested. And it's always nice to know some of the answers when you're asking some of the questions, just to see what type of misinformation the leader of our province is going to put on the record. So in his office, he has a correspondence secretary. He's got a chief of staff, we're joined by today. He's got the deputy chief of staff. He's got a principal secretary, director of human resources, 2 special assistants, a correspondence assistant, and an office coordinator who just so happens to be his party president. Interesting. Interesting. And again, Manitobans will see the real character of this Premier, the MLA for Fort Rouge. As we saw earlier about a week ago, I guess, we were asking questions about the fact that even in his own constituency, there are businesses shutting down due to the lack of action by this Premier, his Justice Minister, his government, failing Manitobans on safety and crime We saw that he was a little agitated, like some other times we've seen. A little agitated with the fact that he's unable to help some of his own constituents, and then how is he going to be able to help the rest of the province when he can't take care of his own backyard? Besides the grass, of course, which I'm sure he'll pay for that service. So again, asking if there's any more orders in council that I possibly missed. He'll have to reference back to Hansard because I didn't see him taking notes. So doing just some quick math, he's got $1.2 million in his office alone. And so I'm not sure if he is definitely echoing the ways of his predecessor, Greg Salinger, but that's sort of looks like the way he's going. So is there any more OICs or executive council members?
The Honourable Premier.
The answer is yes. There are some OICs that the member opposite didn't reference. He also has some facts wrong when he describes some of the good people that we work with. So more research to be done for sure on their side, but I'll make the job easier for them. So we're about, well, 7, not quite 8 months into office since the election. We have 78 order in council appointments. During the same period, the PCs had 86. So perhaps we could appoint a further, group of people to do some more good work. We got a lot of folks out there bringing people together with initiatives like the Public Safety Summit. It was pretty amazing to see members of the Winnipeg Police Service, the RCMP, community groups, voices who are critical of us as government coming to the table, folks who are cheerleading community initiatives to prevent crime and to improve public safety. It was a super positive day, and I cannot thank the staff who pulled that together enough for their important work. There were hundreds of people who came together from every region of the province. You had the rural southern municipal leaders alongside First Nations leaders, alongside community activists, alongside folks who walk the beat, so to speak. Amazing conversations. People were saying, look at that business leader sitting next to that young person, sitting next to that law enforcement officer, and they're strategizing together on important topics like retail theft, like prevention at a community level, ensuring that more young people can stay on a positive path. And that's not the first time we've brought people together to strategize as your government to bring an approach together on community safety and public safety. Of course, members opposite, they would rather sow fear and division. They would rather divide Manitobans, try to pit one group of people or one neighbor against another neighbor. We choose to take a different approach, which is to bring people together. One Manitoba is the title of the budget, and it's an article of faith. We believe that Manitobans are hungry for a message of unity. We know that the pandemic was very divisive and very difficult on the mental health side for everybody. some folks more than others, and I think the average person out there is ready to turn the page on that sort of division and to start talking about solutions. So we got a lot of great folks in the civil service whose expertise we respect and who we acknowledge the professionalism of. I know that after the 2016 election, it seemed to be like an exercise under that PC government to try and paint the civil service in a negative light to justify expenditure reductions. But we look at it differently. We recognize that the civil service are the professionals who are going to allow us to do good things for the people of Manitoba. And they're going to implement the vision that the people of Manitoba have, through their democratic will, invested. Us the great privilege of being able to fulfill. Political staff assist in that endeavor. They are able to engage with community and with across various departments to pull together planning and strategic exercises, such as convening the Public Safety Summit, which not only being a high-quality event, which is now going to be replicated in other regions of the province, but is leading to real solutions to help us bring forward initiatives around prevention and community development and safety. Done some important steps in the budget already. We've delivered on election commitments. Members opposite try to diminish the security camera rebate, but that allows some people to buy 3 security cameras for their home. Hook them up to Wi-Fi and all of a sudden be able to monitor what's going on. It allows some folks to be able to invest in a doorbell cam. These are not insignificant. They're important.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. And so I guess, so the Premier put on the record 78 political staffers to, versus we had 86 OICs. I guess part of my question is, are they in fact paid more? Because from what I'm looking at through his orders in council and just doing some quick math, definitely the 78 political staffers and OICs, which also, accounts for potentially comms, policy, tours, outreach, and all of that. And you know what, I almost forgot. I did need to mention, and the Premier, I appreciate the Premier putting this on the record as well. The one political staffer that I referenced as the Premier's party president, that's right, actually, that individual is no longer the party president because the Premier realized that he made an error, I'm assuming, made an error in appointing that individual in order in council whilst the individual still was the party president. And just recently at the NDP AGM, he's correct, they actually elected a new party president at their recent AGM, the same AGM that the Premier decided to possibly jeopardize years and years of work with other provinces and decided to violate a court order about divulging information about certain court orders. So that's interesting. We look at a lot of the ministerial staff that is serving under the Premier. Their starting salaries have more than almost doubled. So again, I'll let the Premier sort of correct the record on some of the things that he's put on there, and just if he could verify a lot of those numbers. And then I've got some more questions for the Premier. I know that we're just getting started. I guess we're only almost an hour and 15 minutes in, and we've seen that the Premier has no appetite to actually answer any questions. He's going to deflect and dodge and avoid questions. So I guess my question is, the Premier put on the record in regards to the one political staffer is no longer party president. Okay, I admit that that changed as of their AGM. They've got 78 orders in council. I'd like to know, are they all paid more money? And is in fact the ministerial staff starting salaries were almost double of what we were paying.
The Honourable Premier.
I just want to ask the member opposite to sometime watch the phraseology he uses. It's not always clear what he's asking for, but I think the answer that he's seeking is for me to confirm that the amount that political staff are paid now is equal to what was happening at the end of the Stephenson government, and I can confirm that. 7.4 million, I believe, was what former Premier Stephenson was paying her political staff, and her current payroll is about the same. I do want to point out, however, that former Premier Stephenson made a mistake when it came to her political staff. She didn't actually ensure that their pay was pensionable. Some sort of administrative oversight that was typical of the PC administration. And so actually one of the important things that we're doing in this year's budgetary process is we're taking a magnanimous approach, and we're going back retroactively and ensuring that the previous government's PC political staff will be able to qualify for their pensions. We believe that every worker deserves a good pension, and even if folks line up in the election campaign in a different colored jersey than us, and we go out onto the gridiron, so to speak, politically, and contest that, but at the end of the day, those folks are still workers, and even if their former employers didn't do the proper due diligence in ensuring that they could pension their incomes, that we're not going to let them fall through the cracks. So you can imagine there may have been some groans around the table when I explained to our team that the right thing to do would be to explain to the the PC staffers who are writing those talking points, we should do a nice thing for them. Once people saw the situation for what it was, we decided to proceed because, again, partisanship is one thing, but at the end of the day, we're all Manitobans. We're all doing work here, and we all deserve to be treated fairly. So Budget 2024 has at least one important measure that PC political staff from the Stephenson administration can be happy with, which is that they will in fact qualify for their pensions because of our Manitoba NDP government once again cleaning up the mismanagement of the former PC administration. But when we're talking about that process of repair, like, I do feel compelled to point out that when the PCs took office, there were 14,876 civil servants in Manitoba. When we took office, there were 12,054. It's a reduction of 2,822. It's a reduction of 19%. And again, I'm sure the PC team would be proud of putting Manitobans out of work. But when I look at that, I draw a straight line to the people in rural Manitoba who've been complaining about snow clearing. Manitobans who've been complaining about any number of public services in parks and on highways, conservation officers whose positions are made that much more dangerous by short staffing situations. The challenges that we see in many, many areas of the public service. So Brian Pallister set out with a specific agenda in this regard, but the piece that was lacking was a rationalization that balanced the need to deliver public services. We take a different approach. We respect the public service. Public service are professionals who allow us to do things like clear the roads, open the parks, be able to deliver the health care that Manitobans are counting on. So we're happy to work with them. We're happy for their service. And of course, we're going to do right by them. When we came into office, we were confronted with, well, one strike was in full effect, and we were confronted with the prospect of a few others. We were able to quickly and equitably bring those situations to a resolution. And now with the nursing tentative agreement, which I'm describing here today, we hope to be able to take another significant step forward. And again, ensure that Manitobans get the services they need in an efficient way, but in a way that's also robust and meeting their needs. Because at the end of the day, it's not about politicians, it's about you, the people.
They both must be thinking because they're both quiet right now.
Honorable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. So the information that, some of the information that the Premier's put on record, again, you know, fails to get close to the question that was asked. And so I'm going to ask a very simple question, short question, take up only a few more seconds. So I've got the email premier@manitoba.ca. Is this the Premier's only email address?
The Honorable First Minister.
Yeah, you know, the email question's an interesting one with a colorful history under the former PC administration. There is, of course, former Premier Brian Pallister, who claimed not to check his email, and of course, as a result, folks close to him had their email accounts subject to FIPA and other things like that. You also had former Premier Heather Stephenson go to quite some lengths to have a government email account neither be confirmed nor denied, and was the subject of a lot of FIPA activity and appeals and ombudsman complaints perhaps, and really no degree of transparency there. And then, you know, in something that's almost like an absurd length for a government to go to try and combat the opposition. I recall that in the first year of the pandemic, when most people were asking the PCs to add intensive care unit beds, a call which had been heeded perhaps could have avoided some very negative outcomes later on in the third wave, to be specific. The PC administration of the day decided to force the then opposition to migrate to a different email server. And it's decided that the leg.gov.mb.ca email server could only be for the government benches, and then we'd have to, as the then opposition, migrate to a different @mbleg.ca series of addresses. Again, I think around the same time, they decided to dive deep into the management of office space around the Legislative building. Not sure the public review of the COVID situation will go to that level of detail, but I'm pretty sure the average Manitoban would say that that government should have spent more time on hiring nurses and creating ICU beds rather than worrying about email servers and office space in the Ledge. But that's sort of, you know, the incontrovertible facts of the matter. Member asked a yes or no question. The answer is no. Obviously, there's many email addresses, including personal email addresses, that I use. We'll follow the same FIPA rules and guidance and standards set by the previous PC administration. Got a constituency email address and so on. We'll be happy to provide transparency, at least to the same standard as Heather Stephenson or Brian Pallister. In fact, I think you're seeing over the course of this afternoon a higher degree of standard. Again, matters that were previously under the last administration taken under advisement. You know, perhaps it's not as fast as a member opposite would like, but these answers are being provided here in the committee. There's no need for me to go out and rake my lawn myself while waiting. Rather, you know, can provide these answers in short order. But it is important to put some things on the record, like the details of the nursing agreement. I hope that folks are able to review those details. Also, I'm looking at a list of names of people who were PC party presidents and campaign directors who were made order and council appointments. I'm not going to say the names on the record just because, you know, no sense bringing folks into this unnecessarily. But we do know that the PC administration appointed people from party president roles, campaign director roles into order and council positions. Some of those folks are very active on social media, so wouldn't want to get tweeted about, I guess, is what I'm saying on that. But I do think there's one element that'll take out of this estimates process and repeat and question period tomorrow, which is that the member opposite said about me, and I quote, "He's correct," end quote. He said that on a few occasions, so I'll be sure to remind him of that fact, that he's acknowledging the accuracy and veracity of the information being shared here. So again, it's an important exercise that we're going through. We've set a high standard with respect to transparency, and we'll continue to maintain it. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. And so, you know, in the, it's nice to hear that the Premier is going to be talking about transparency and accountability, because I'm not sure if Manitobans are seeing or hearing that really from this Premier, and it's going to be interesting. I guess sometime in the future, that's what he's committing to, that I will get a list of these other emails. Can he ballpark it? And what I mean by that, just for clarification, because I know his sport isn't baseball, it's more wrestling, but ballpark it, what I mean by that is, can he give me an estimate or an exact number of how many other emails he uses either personally or his staff has access to on his behalf? Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Can the Premier give me a number, since sometime between today and the future I'm going to get a list of these emails, according to what the Premier has said, in light of transparency and accountability, can you at least tell me the number of how many email addresses the Premier has, whether personally, as the Premier, or that his staff has access to on his behalf?
The Honorable First Minister.
No, and the information that the member opposite is sharing, the way he's characterizing my answer is incorrect, and anyone reviewing Hansard will see that. Previous answer was a response to a yes or no question. I answered that. But in so doing, I also pointed out that the previous government vociferously guarded the former Premier's email address or addresses, citing personal privacy as a reason. They refused to confirm or deny even the existence of some of these emails. And so we'll do the same or better when it comes to transparency. But again, there's a standard that was set for the last Premier. I take seriously concerns around security and safety for my colleagues, and so I'm not going to make any sort of characterization about the decision that was undertaken by the previous government in that respect, and I'll simply point out that we are going to maintain the same standard or better. That said, you know, when it comes to freedom of information requests, we had an amazing FIPA team doing research on our behalf, and one of the important things that they did is that they did a ton of appeals through FIPA coordinators and to the ombudsperson in Manitoba, and they actually set a number of high standards around the disclosure of information. And one of the things that means is that the precedent that we set in opposition as folks petitioning and applying for FIPAs are now standards that we are going to abide by in government. And so we'll always respond to these requests, and we'll certainly expect over the many years in opposition to come for the PCs that they'll file many FIPA requests, and we'll respond to all of them seriously through the appropriate channels, through the appropriate FIPA coordinators, and ensuring that of course when the people of Manitoba have standards around the Freedom of Information and Personal Privacy Act, that those things be respected and taken seriously. Again, some of those other interludes into email world were probably under the previous BC government were more akin to Hillary Clinton email type controversies and less befitting of a serious administration in Manitoba, but you know, that's what they did. When we're talking about forcing people to change email servers during the first year of the pandemic, or claiming not to have access to an email account when you're in some southern locale, I can't remember if it was in the US or a jurisdiction further south of that. But yeah, certainly we'll do better than that administration did. So I just wanted to clarify some points for the member opposite, because he seemed to be characterizing things in an inaccurate fashion. I just want to ensure that it is being characterized accurately for those folks who now have to go back and take a look at the records to see what is in fact being taken under advisement. And so the question that was just posed, you've received a yes or no answer to, just like the previous one. And I'm offering context here to explain how this is consistent with past practice in the provincial government here in Manitoba. And even as we sit here and listen to questions from the opposition, I'm handed more papers of more people who were appointed from PC party staff to order and council appointments under the former PC government. So certainly it was something widely practiced under the PC administration. Anyway, so that's a bit about the past practices on email. When we come back to the nursing tentative agreement, I do think it's significant for the people of Manitoba to have time to digest this. And I'd be happy to walk through various scenarios that may arise. I know that for the average young nurse out there, this is going to provide job security, a pathway towards full-time employment. For the nurses who are thinking about potentially retirement, it's going to ensure that any earnings worked in the float pool are pensionable. And then, of course, our hope is that for nurses as a whole, as a collective, this is going to provide greater resources and support for them working at the bedside. And so there's a lot of good work under that tentative agreement.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, again. So I asked the question, is premier@manitoba.ca the Premier's only email address? He's saying no. Will the Premier disclose other emails that he personally or his staff has access to on his behalf? Premier said no. So much for transparency and accountability, Honourable Chairperson. He is saying that there's the FIPA information and all that type of wonderful stuff, freedom of access. We know what happens when you do that with any NDP government. He's obviously taking a page out of his predecessor, one of his mentors, Greg Selinger, on the redacting, and that's what he will be doing. He won't provide the straightforward information that's been requested of him. You know, how many emails? He couldn't even answer that, Honourable Speaker or Honourable Chairperson. So I just wanted to put that on the record. I know that the Premier talks about characterization and those types of ideas. I'm not sure if he really wants to get into the words on character and history and go down that road just yet. So I'm hoping that he'll just be able to straight up answer a couple of questions. But he's right. I did ask him a couple of yes and no questions, and he straight up on the record said that no, he will not disclose the answers to my questions. And so we will go through the process to ask for that. So hopefully he doesn't go ahead and start scrubbing the information like I know that previous NDP governments did. So when we talk about communication devices, some of the relevant policies and protocols, and he talked about policies and protocols. So in regards to relevant policies and protocols with regards to communication, electronic devices, and network usage, does he follow those relevant policies and protocols? And does his office? So it's a two-part. Hopefully he can stay on track and focus, because I know he has difficulties doing that. We've seen the history. But hopefully he can stay on focus and talk about, does he follow all relevant policies and protocols with regards to communication, electronic devices, and network usage? I know that's a yes or no. And does his office? Yes or no?
The Honourable First Minister.
Trouble focusing. I talked about healthcare every single day of the election campaign. every single answer here this afternoon practically I talked about healthcare as well. So yeah, I guess perhaps I should focus more on healthcare, talk more about the tentative agreement with nurses. Be happy to spell out more of that. Answer to the two questions posed is yes, and yes. But when it comes to healthcare, I really do want us to be able to get to yes to all the questions that Manitobans have. Are you going to fix healthcare? Yes. Are you going to produce the results that we deserve? Yes. Are nurses and physicians and healthcare professionals going to be treated with respect? Yes. Are they going to be able to speak freely if they're criticizing government or policy changes, things like that? Yes, absolutely. We've made changes in healthcare already to reduce bureaucracy and to focus on the front lines. And we've continued to work with folks who were on the other side of those decisions and perhaps arguing for a different course to be taken. We've allowed them to criticize us publicly, and we're still working with those folks because we recognize that having a dissenting opinion is not disrespectful. In fact, it can often make the process stronger. When we're talking about something as important as healthcare, it's important to have that diversity of opinions so that we can arrive at a robust, strong path forward. And it's that sort of process that led us to this tentative agreement with the nurses. We were able to have a lot of conversations with people from the front lines to identify what the issues were. And when some solutions came from the front lines, we were more than happy to bring those forward. And where we may have had a proposal to put in an incentive to bring nurses back from the agencies, we're able to bring resources from government, whether that's on the civil service side or analytical capacity from political staff, to be able to develop that up into a fully formed policy that is reflected through the MOU and the LOA and the tentative agreement. And I think it's important for nurses and for the general public to know that background, because this is not some plan for healthcare that was cooked up in a boardroom or that was drawn on a whiteboard. This is actually a plan for healthcare that comes from the front lines. And it's evidence of the collaboration that our government is willing to bring forward. If you got a great idea you're bringing from the front lines, we're happy to help. We're happy to put the resources necessary to develop that into something that's ready to be implemented in all of its complexity. So again, I think a lot of the public reporting so far is focused on some of the general wage increase and salary scale adjustments and premiums and health spending account and wellness days sort of considerations, all of which are important. But this afternoon, I really do want to underline for folks out there that the memorandum that we have to create this full-time incentive, combined with the flexibility of an expanded provincial float pool, is going to be an important tool to bringing nurses back from the private agencies. Similarly, the letter of agreement sketches forward the path to us working together to improve nurse-to-patient ratios, and also consequently path towards reducing overtime and then eliminating it as a regular human resource tool. Again, mandatory overtime came into existence, for situations where perhaps there was some emergency, some dramatic situation outside of the norm in which you had to have nurses and other healthcare professionals stay on beyond their shift. And most nurses and healthcare professionals will tell you, yeah, when there's a situation like that, you don't even have to mandate us. We're just going to stay working alongside our colleagues until the work is done. But where that emerged as an extreme situation under the PC government, it became the de facto approach to staffing up healthcare. And one of the reasons nurses are leaving the front lines towards the private agencies is because they've had the experience of showing up to work so often and being mandated to work overtime. And there's a desire for that to change. And so nurses under the previous government were speaking as a collective by leaving in large numbers. And it's my hope that with this new tentative agreement, nurses will speak again as a collective and say, this is an important tool to fix the issues that we've been worried about for a long, long time. I can see that happening, but of course it will only happen with continued commitment from all parties.
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. So we've heard over the last few weeks, of course, and read and had our hearts ache over hearing certain things. There was an internal review into Maya Lee, and recommendations should have been out middle of May. March 7th, CBC, and I quote, "Get me out of this place," end quote. And in quote, "In the days and months before she was killed, 17-year-old Maya Grattan told friends and family she feared for her safety and asked to be removed from Carmen, Manitoba, the house that she lived in with 4 other victims, and the man now charged with murder in their deaths." Maya Grattan's mother, Juliet Hastings, has sent a series of audio recordings and text messages to CBC News saying they show the child welfare system and the family and friends failed to protect her daughter when she asked for help. She was ignored, Hastings said. So the Premier said he was open to a public inquiry. Why hasn't one happened? And why is he keeping information a secret?
The Honourable First Minister.
What took place in relation to this family from Carmen is so dark. It's a tragedy when you think of the young lives. And I want to begin by sending my condolences. And also to acknowledge the suffering of the family members and their grief. I've had the opportunity to speak to many of them, including Juliet, the woman that the member opposite is referring to. Spoken to other family members, people who knew them, people who just knew them from the community, landlords, employers, all sorts of people. One of the things that really stood out to me about attending some of the events in Carmen was the community response. Folks in the community, you know, they could have responded in many ways, but the fact that they responded with a tone that indicated they viewed these folks as their own kin, their own family, it meant a lot to me to see that. I think it meant a lot to everybody across Manitoba. And after putting a call out for folks to pray for the victims and for the mourning, I was very moved also to see how many Manitobans stepped up, church people, spiritual people from other walks of life, to say that they took time out to pray over what had happened and to offer support for the people of Carmen and the families. This goes beyond a political issue in my estimation. I was the first person to talk of an inquiry. And so any accountability questions the opposition wants to ask, they're free to do so. They should do so in the light of the fact that I was the first person to raise the prospect of an inquiry. There's an internal review going on right now. It's more complex than originally estimated in terms of the number of people that are being spoken to, so the process continues. I also want to say, as somebody who is concerned with justice and the largest possible interpretation of the term, vis-a-vis its meaning in our society, that it's important that we respect the process that is before the courts. The person who's alleged to have done these terrible things is in custody and will be facing a trial. And whatever we do should not compromise the sanctity of that important process. And so I've said this directly to the mother that is being referred to, who I've spoken to. I've said this to other family members. Let's respect the trial process with the greatest of respect for your pain and suffering. And where there are questions unanswered, through those hearings and through the internal review that is currently going on, If there are questions unresolved, then yes, we would proceed with an inquiry. It's the thing that I said on day one of being asked this question. It's the thing that I'll continue to say. I know that our team feels the same way. Our Minister of Families is doing important work in this respect. And one of the conversations that we had following this terrible tragedy and just speaking about some of the other awful things that have happened with respect to child welfare over the years in Manitoba was, let's show respect for the families. Let's show respect for the community. Let's memorialize what took place here. But let's also take action. And there has been a series of recommendations going back to the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry, which also looked at the child welfare system, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, the final report into the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Two-Spirit Plus, a number of reports from the Children's Advocate, and they outline a series of recommendations that we're going to pursue in the interim. And importantly, one of them is about ensuring Indigenous jurisdiction over child welfare. So we made a commitment to First Nations leaders in the province just over a week ago that as soon as nations are ready to move in that direction, we will expedite the process.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Honourable Chairperson, and I appreciate, of course, the sensitivity and the horrific, and of course the thoughts and prayers go out to the family, the community, and anyone else throughout the province and the country and the world that has to go through anything like this. And I appreciate the Premier putting on the record talking about sending the prayers out to the family and the community. And it wasn't that long ago, prior to the election, that the Premier, and I know that there's many times the Premier put on the record that he said himself during opposition that he either misspoke or didn't know what he didn't know when he was in opposition during the election and now after the election, where he led ridiculing of some of our ministers and members in the chamber of sending thoughts and prayers out to family members, and he stood and he ridiculed those members for talking even about prayers and thoughts. And today he mentions praying. I'm glad that he's turned the leaf again. But I'd like to end with this question, and then the Premier will have a chance to. He says that the internal review isn't quite finished, and it was supposed to be out the middle of May. And he said the public inquiry, he was open to that. So I guess, does he have a timeline on when those recommendations and the review are going to be presented publicly?
The Honourable First Premier. First Minister.
I want to table an org chart of the Executive Council prior to committee wrapping up this afternoon. Again, we're setting a new bar here and look forward to maintaining it over the years to come. With respect to the specific question, I'm not able to give a specific date at this time, but I'll ask after that answer. I don't actually know a specific date, otherwise I would provide it. But the reason for the additional timeline is because more people are being interviewed. I take this as a sign of the seriousness with which this is being undertaken. And then, of course, I think we can expect that in addition to whatever additional interviews are being conducted, there will have to be time to process and to consider that information and to synthesize it into a report, but this is in the public interest, so we will be sharing updates with the people of Manitoba as we go.
Order. The hour being 5 p.m., committee rise, call in the speaker. The hour being 5 p.m., this House is adjourned and stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow.